The habit of calving began in silence, in the quiet fields of my chest, where pain grazed like a restless animal and love stood behind a wooden fence watching me divide myself again and again. I did not know the word for breaking, so I called it devotion. I did not know the word for loneliness, so I called it patience. I did not know the word for leaving, so I called it destiny. The habit of calving is not learned in a day. It grows slowly, like winter grass beneath frost, like a wound beneath a sleeve, like a promise beneath doubt. Every time I loved, I split open. Every time I trusted, a new cry was born inside me. Something small and trembling would fall from the body of my hope, stand on fragile legs, look at me with wet eyes, and ask why the world is so cold. I never had an answer. The habit of calving is ancient, older than my first heartbreak, older than the night I waited for a message that never arrived, older than the echo of footsteps fading down a corridor of goodbye. It is the habit of giving birth to sorrow and calling it love. I have fields inside me, wide and endless, where memories graze freely. Some are gentle, some have horns sharp as regret. At dusk, I walk among them. I whisper to each memory, touch its forehead, and forgive it for being born from my own longing. The habit of calving means I carry more than one heart. One beats in my chest. One lies buried under old conversations. One still waits by a closed door. And each time I hear your name, another heart trembles into existence. I remember the first time I felt it. That splitting, that sacred ache. Like a sky tearing open with thunder. Like rain falling from a cloud that could no longer hold itself together. I thought love would make me whole. Instead, it made me fertile with grief. From every argument, a new creature of doubt was born. From every silence, a calf of suspicion staggered into light. From every tear, a fragile thing with your shadow in its eyes looked up at me and asked to be held. I held them all. The habit of calving is not weakness. It is the body's refusal to keep pain unborn. Some people swallow their storms. I give mine names. I watch them breathe. I let them cry under the moon. There were nights when I lay on the floor of my own thoughts and felt something inside me push against the walls of endurance. Another ending was coming. I knew the signs, the heavy silence, the distant warmth, the way your voice became a foreign country. And still I stayed, because I had grown used to the splitting. I had grown used to the trembling legs of newborn sorrow. I had grown used to cleaning the blood of broken promises with hands that still believed in miracles. The habit of calving is this, to know the pain is coming and to open anyway. I opened. When you said goodbye, something inside me knelt. Something ancient and maternal. Something that knew a new grief was about to breathe. Came quietly this time, no thunder, no storm. Just a soft collapse like snow falling from a tired branch. And there it was, small, shivering, with your smile faintly carved into its fragile face. I wrapped it in forgiveness. The fields inside me are crowded now. So many small shapes moving through the fog of memory. Some have grown strong. Some still cry at night. I walk among them with tired love. I call them by the dates they were born. The day you forgot my birthday. The evening you chose silence over truth. The moment I realized I was loving alone. Each one came from me. Each one carries my heartbeat. The habit of calving has made me gentle. When I see someone else breaking, I recognize the labor in their eyes. I see the strain in their silence. I know the sacred exhaustion of birthing pain. I do not judge them. I sit beside them and say, it is okay, let it come. Do not push it back into darkness, because what is not born turns into poison. And I have tasted that poison before. The bitterness of pretending I was not splitting, the heaviness of holding sorrow inside unspoken chambers. It nearly killed me, so now I let everything arrive. When love hurts, I open the gates. When trust cracks, I prepare the straw. When goodbye approaches, I steady myself for the trembling cry. The habit of calving has shaped my spine. It has bent me, but it has not broken me. For every fragile grief that once struggled to stand, I have learned patience. I have learned to breathe slowly. I have learned that nothing born of the heart is truly wasted. Even pain grows into wisdom if given enough sky. There are mornings when the fields are quiet, when no new sorrow pushes forward, when the air smells like peace and the horizon looks merciful. On those mornings, I almost believe I am healed. But healing is not the absence of birth. It is the courage to continue living despite the certainty of another split. The habit of calving is not something I chose. It chose me the first time I loved too deeply. It chose me the first time I forgave too quickly. It chose me the first time I waited for someone who was not waiting for me. Now it lives in my bones. And yet there is beauty in it. For every sorrow born, there is tenderness. For every fracture, there is a widening of the soul. For every goodbye, there is space for something truer to arrive. Perhaps one day a different kind of birth will come. Not grief, not doubt, not the thin-legged ache of abandonment, but joy. Perhaps one day I will feel that familiar pressure, that ancient stirring, and instead of sorrow, something bright will fall into my waiting hands. Something with your kindness but without your leaving. Something with warmth that does not fade. Until then, I walk my fields. I tend to what has been born from me. I speak softly to each fragile memory. I forgive myself for loving with such open gates. The habit of calving has made me many things, lonely, yes, but also vast. For within me there is room for every cry, every trembling beginning, every broken promise that dared to take shape. And even now, as I stand beneath the wide sky of my own endurance, I feel another quiet stirring. Not fear, not despair, just life, insisting on being born again and again from the fertile soil of my heart. And I do not run from it anymore. I stand still in the tall grass of memory, hands open, breathing through the ache as if it were sacred incense rising from the altar of my ribs. The habit of calving has taught me that nothing leaves without leaving something behind. Even the cruelest goodbye drops a seed in the soil. Sometimes that seed becomes resentment, a thorned bush growing wild in the night. Sometimes it becomes wisdom, a quiet tree with patient shade. I have grown both. There were seasons when my inner fields looked like battlefields. Hoof prints of harsh words, trampled trust, the smell of something once living now turning into silence. In those seasons, I almost swore to close the gates forever. I almost told myself no more births, no more splitting, no more trembling cries in the dark. But the body of the heart does not obey such vows. It softens again. It hopes again. It prepares straw in hidden corners even while whispering, "This time, be careful." Careful, what a fragile fence that word is. Love does not respect fences. It leaps them, wild and shining, kicking dust into the careful air I tried to breathe. And there I was again, bent with that familiar pressure, teeth clenched around hope, waiting for the next small life to fall from the sky of expectation. The habit of calving is strange. It makes you both creator and witness. You feel the tearing and you hear the cry. You bleed and you comfort. You are both the storm and the shelter. I have held newborn grief against my chest while whispering, "It is not your fault you were born." I have rocked disappointment like a sleepless child, counting the seconds between heartbeats until it learned to breathe more quietly. I have watched jealousy stumble on weak legs and guided it gently toward the light of understanding. Every feeling wants to live. Every ache demands a name. The habit of calving means you do not deny them existence. You let them arrive even if they change the landscape forever. There was a time when I thought I was cursed, too sensitive, too open, too willing to split for love. But I have begun to see that what I called weakness was simply abundance. Some hearts are stone wells, deep, dark, holding little water. Mine is a riverbank in spring, overflowing, unable to stop what rises from within. Yes, it floods. Yes, it erodes. Yes, it carries away pieces of me I once thought permanent. But it also nourishes. The habit of calving has given me eyes that recognize the trembling in others. When someone laughs too loudly, I see the small grief hidden behind their teeth. When someone grows distant, I sense the pressure building in their silence. I know what it means to carry something unborn for too long. It grows heavy. It distorts your posture. It steals sleep. Better to let it come. Better to kneel in the field of your own honesty and allow the cry to echo. There are nights now when I sit under the wide sky of my thoughts and count all the lives that have come from loving you. The hopeful one who believed forever was real. The anxious one who waited for replies like rain in drought. The forgiving one who excused what should not have been excused. The weary one who finally understood silence as an answer. They all live here. They all graze under the same moon. Sometimes they gather close to me, their breaths warm in the cold air of memory. Sometimes they wander far, exploring corners of my mind I have not visited in years. But none of them disappear. The habit of calving does not erase, transforms. The sharp pain of yesterday becomes the quiet strength of today. The fragile sorrow grows into resilient compassion. The broken promise turns into a boundary drawn with care. I am no longer afraid of the splitting. I know now that every birth inside me expands the horizon. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it costs. Yes, it leaves marks that do not fade. But it also makes room. Room for deeper truth. Room for clearer love. Room for someone who will not walk away when the fields grow difficult. And if that someone never comes, still I will not regret the habit. Because to live without calving would mean to harden, to close the gates, to let the soil dry and crack until nothing dares to grow. I refuse that fate. I would rather split 1,000 times than become barren. I would rather hear the cry of new sorrow than live in sterile silence. For even grief is proof that the heart is fertile. Even loss is evidence of courage. The habit of calving is my quiet rebellion against numbness. It is my declaration that I will continue to feel, continue to open, continue to risk the trembling miracle of something new being born from the body of love. And tonight, as the wind moves softly through the tall grass of memory, I feel no shame in my abundance. Let the world call me too much. Let it say I love too deeply. Let it warn me about breaking. I have already learned that breaking is not the end. It is simply the beginning of another small life standing on unsteady legs in the vast, waiting field of my heart, and I walk toward it slowly, not as a victim of my own tenderness, but as a keeper of all that has ever risen from me. The sky above my inner fields has changed colors so many times. Burning orange with anger, ash gray with doubt, midnight blue with longing, and pale gold with forgiveness. Each color arrived after something new was born. I remember the birth of pride, how it came after you chose someone else's laughter over my quiet devotion. Stood tall immediately, stubborn, defiant, refusing to bow to your memory. For a while, pride guarded the gates, chased away hope. It barked at every approaching feeling. But even pride softened when loneliness arrived again, heavy and patient, carrying the familiar ache of your absence. The habit of calving does not stop just because you decide you are tired. Continues in hidden corners. Prepares new life from old wounds. There were evenings when I thought nothing remained. No more tears, no more words, no more fragile creatures waiting to fall. Then a song would play, or a scent would drift through a passing crowd, or someone would speak your name by accident, and I would feel it, that subtle shift inside my ribs, that ancient pressure. Another birth approaching. This one might be small, barely able to stand. Just a flicker of missing you on an otherwise calm day. But I let it arrive. I kneel in my own awareness and hold it gently. I do not curse it for existing. I do not blame myself for still caring. The habit of calving has made me honest. I can no longer pretend that I am untouched by what has happened. I can no longer act as if love left no imprint. The fields remember everything. They remember the first confession, how my voice trembled like a newborn calf finding air. They remember the first argument, how sharp words cut through trust like winter wine through thin skin. They remember the last embrace, how it felt longer than usual, as if both of us sensed something inside me preparing to split again. When you walked away, you did not see what followed. You did not see me in the quiet afterward, bent over the ache, breathing through the labor of goodbye. You did not see the small shape of acceptance finally fall into my hands after hours of silent struggle. Acceptance was different. It did not cry loudly. It did not tremble as much. It simply looked at me with tired understanding. and I knew then that I was changing. The habit of calving was no longer only about sorrow. It was about growth. Each birth left me altered. Not weaker, but wider. There are scars across the landscape now. Places where the grass grows differently. Places where the soil is darker from tears that once soaked it. But there are also clearings, open spaces where sunlight rests without obstruction. In those clearings, I sit with myself. Not as someone abandoned, not as someone broken, but as someone who has survived many labors of the heart. I touch the earth beneath me and feel gratitude. Gratitude for the capacity to feel. Gratitude for the courage to open. Gratitude for the stubborn pulse that insists on loving again even after so much has been born and lost. The habit of calving has become my rhythm. Pressure, pain, arrival, care, release, over and over, until I no longer fear the cycle. Sometimes I wonder if one day love will come differently. Not as a storm that tears me open, not as a force that demands another splitting, but as a steady presence that walks beside me in the fields without causing new births of grief. A love that tends what already lives here. A love that understands there are many fragile creatures grazing inside me. A love that does not run at the first cry. If such a love exists, it will find me ready. Ready not because I am empty, but because I am full. Full of lessons, full of resilience, full of soft strength forged in the quiet aftermath of loss. The habit of calving has made me patient with myself. When I feel the stir of jealousy, I do not shame it. I guide it toward trust. When anger is born, hot and wild-eyed, I give it space to breathe until it becomes clarity. When longing returns, gentle but persistent, I let it sit beside me like an old companion who means no harm. Nothing inside me is an enemy anymore. Everything that is born here is part of my becoming. And so tonight, under the endless sky of my own endurance, I feel another subtle movement. Not sorrow this time, not regret, something lighter. It presses softly against the walls of my chest. Not demanding, not desperate. Curiosity, perhaps, or quiet hope. I do not rush it. I have learned patience. If it wishes to be born, I will be here. Hands steady, heart open. The habit of calving has transformed from a wound into a wisdom, from a curse into a calling. For I now understand that to split open for love is not to lose myself. It is to discover how much of myself I am capable of giving and still remaining.